Oh, I see what you're saying. I can see it over there, right? Let's call this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. We're going to start with salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of March 25th, 2024 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question or comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2024-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Two River Times on January 4th, 2024, posted on the Borough website, the Bulletin Board and Municipal Building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include the statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Paul. Here. Pimentelli. Here. Cohen. Here. Cox. Here. Rivera.
Here.
Wilson.
Here. Great, rolling right into it. We have Sean Cranston, Darren Groh here from RFH High School, and happy to have you. What up?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Sean Cranston. I'm the business administrator for Rumson High School. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. We reached out just so we could, this is my second year and Darren's second year together, and reached out realizing that last year, the history of it was, I guess, the business administrator has reached out to the town and asked if they wanted us to share the presentation on the budget. Teresa got back to me, and we're here tonight just to do a brief presentation, just so you guys can see what's going on in RFH and hopefully answer some of your questions if you may have some. So a little bit about the process.
Do you have an extra one real quick?
Yeah, there's.
Oh, I'm missing one.
Here.
I think, yeah. Wow. Sorry.
Here.
Good. I think maybe. Thank you. There you go.
A little bit about the budget process. We start the budget process in November, and we work all the way through to March 12th. We actually had a tentative budget presentation with the board, and that's exactly what it is. It's a tentative budget. The board approved the tentative budget, and now it's in the county's hands. And what the county does is they review it. The county DA, town superintendent, review the budget, get back to us on any possible changes they may feel that we might need, and then we have our budget presentation for the public, or open public presentation on April 24th this year. So just going to go through the second slide, which is on the top right, our 2024-2025 budgeted revenue, the expectation. You can see that the local tax levy, and this is for the total budget, so it's Rumson and Fairhaven, went up 2%, which is the max cap that we can go up. Our state aid number, you might have saw the paper, our state aid number went up about 1.83%. We include extraordinary aid in that, which we kept flat, so our state aid numbers went up 1.5%. Our tuition numbers went up 47% was what we're projecting. We take in tuition for two types of students. We take in non-residents that are general education students that would like to come to RFH. They go through an application process, and then we also have a very good MD or multiply disabled program. So we actually take students in from other districts that might not be able to get housed at their home district that we're able to house there, and we get tuition rate for them as well. Miscellaneous, you can see, went up 64%. That's mostly interest. Interest rates are pretty high right now, so I budgeted a little bit higher than we did last year. Budget fund balance is what the state says we have to budget for that. That's like, what's kind of like, give you a really brief explanation, kind of what's left over from 2 years prior, and then we're capped that we have to budget that. Withdrawal for capital reserve. Capital reserve is like a savings account, and we have close to $6 million in that to do on capital projects. So we're withdrawing a little over $1 million, as you can see from that. We're doing a big roof renovation over 2 giant sections of our school. The maintenance withdrawal, we're withdrawing 400,000 from our maintenance reserve. That number is capped, actually. The state has a whole formula, and we're pretty much at the cap. The cap for us is about 1.1 million. There's a whole formula that goes into that. So we're at the cap anyway. With interest, we're gonna be over that cap, so we have to withdraw. So what we're gonna do is withdraw and do maintenance work, and that is gonna be over our 400 wing. The 400 wing, if you drive down Ridge Road, is the first one you see next to softball fields. We did the roof on that last year. That wing now is gonna get new windows. We're gonna repoint the siding, we're gonna do new gutters, so a lot of maintenance work on that to freshen that up. The proposed, so obviously that was the revenues. Those are coming in, you know, they're considered revenue from the state, but really they're pulling out of a savings account, those last 2. Proposed budget or expenditures is the third slide, the bottom left. You can kind of see, I broke this down into hopefully pretty easy categories to see. Our general education numbers went up about 5%, so did our special education numbers. Then tells everything from our salaries of our teachers to our supplies that we buy in those departments, to some tuition costs possibly. Our co-curriculars and athletics are pretty self-explanatory. Our tuition numbers, you can see that actually went way down, 28%. Tuition is what we pay for out-of-state or out-of-district tuition. So maybe some special ed students that we can't house that may have needs that they need to go somewhere else. Some of them are aging out, some of the students, so we're saving a lot of money in that category. Support services, we're about equal support services, everything that's not a teacher, guidance, our CST, our paraprofessionals, our maintenance workers. Administration prices, cost went about 2.83%. Operations and maintenance is the big jump, but that's what I just explained to you previously. It went up 400,000 just for doing the siding of the 400 wing. Transportation costs went down. Mostly that's because of out of district tuition. We're not transferring people all over the state. A couple number of students went down, so that tuition cost and transportation went down as well. Our benefits are about 7.8%. That's pretty good. You guys probably know when you do your budget that getting under 8% is a really good benefits. So we did a good job there. And then the capital improvements, obviously it looks like it went up 377%, but 1 million of that is pulling out of that cap reserve number we spoke about. Some of our highlights are just some things that you can know about our budget. Our salary and benefits make up about 65.6% of our budget this year. Usually it's around 70%. This year it's a little lower because we had pulling $1 million out for a one-time expenditure. Our co-curricular and athletics is a good portion of our budget, and it's going up a little bit because we possibly might have a new sport next year. We might have girls spike football. So that might be, it's a bit, yeah. So it looks like if it's we have it right now as a club, but if it becomes a full sport, then we'll probably move in that direction as well. Curriculum writing and PD, we have a curriculum director that we usually redo curriculum every 5 years, so it's on a rotating basis. So this summer, something that was done 5 years ago is going to get done this summer, and we're looking at different PD to bring in to kind of support that curriculum and support the teachers' needs as well. A big update is we're going to upgrade our wireless internet, which is probably like 15 years old in our building, so that needed to be done. We did part of it this year, putting some infrastructure in. This spring break we're doing it, and then this summer we're going to put everything else. I'm not an expert with that, but they're going to put the hotspots and all that stuff that's going in that. And we're actually getting 40% of that money back too with our E-rate. So the requirements of 400,000 we previously discussed. Some of the equipment we're buying a kiln for the art room. We're buying a salt spreader, so for the back of our truck. And then our big capital improvements is our roof replacement that we just previously discussed, and the HVAC and mechanical upgrades. Most of our HVAC is at end of life. They put up most of it in all together in 2004. It's end of life around 2024. So we're now in a process of trying to do it in pieces over the next couple of years and seeing what the best options are for that. So we did budget for mechanical upgrades as well. You go to the back, top left slide is what the board approved It's just breaking down by general fund, special revenue fund, and debt service fund. If you look at the bottom right number, it's 22 million is our total taxes to be levied. Out of that 22 million, Fairhaven is on the slide right next to that, it's 6.6 million of that. I gave you a little equation just so you can see how tax rate equation works. If we do the total tax levy, which is the 6.6 million, we divide it by the assessed value. The assessed value I got off the Monmouth County website, it's 2.5 billion is the total assessed value of Fairhaven properties, that's commercial and residential. It's about a $200 million increase from last year. Last year, I think it was in the 2.3 billion range. So that comes out to 0.002636. Really what that means in layman's terms is it's basically 26 cents for every $100 of assessed value. So in the bottom left kind of says the average home value was last year's average home value. I don't have that number. This year it usually comes out around April. I could not find it yet. What that means for an average home of $1.1 million, the RFH tax will be $2,900 of that, $2,925. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
What's the 183,000 revenue in the debt service fund? Is that from the state?
Sure. Yeah, so good question. So debt services for our referendum that was passed like 5 or 6 years ago. The anticipated revenue, 182 comes from the state, correct? And then the rest is levied between the two towns.
What's the total percent increase to the taxpayer? Right, so if you went off of last year's home value, I think the new one's at 1.215 million right now. But if you went off of last year's value, well.
Sure, so actually last year's value was 28 cents and now it's 26. So it's actually down a little bit. And I think it's down a little bit because I don't know if you guys got reassessed recently, but the fact that it went up $200 million in total valuation obviously makes the denominator bigger. So it makes the tax rate actually went down a little bit. So last year was like 28 cents per $100 assessed. Now it's 26 cents.
Right, but the assessed value has gone up over 100 grand, right? So it's not as 1-to-1.
Right, so I can't, so last year, if it's $1 million home last year and $1 million home this year, let's just say your house was assessed at the same exact thing, you'd actually pay less tax. I'm assuming that some houses are assessed a little higher this year based on the fact that Fairhaven went up 200 million.
Got it.
But per the 100,000, it actually went down 2 cents per 100,000.
And do you have
Per 100, sorry.
thank you. And do you have like an Excel file that includes both Fairhaven and Rumson side by side, folding up into the total expenditures and everything? Like, do you have where there's like two rows
Yeah,
here?
correct. So when I hand the budget into the state, Fairhaven and Rumson are both in that equation, correct?
No. Do you have one where it breaks it down?
Yes,
Awesome. Would you be able to pass that to Teresa?
absolutely.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And again, if the tentative thing I just submitted, I can definitely submit that, yeah. And it'll be part of my budget presentation in April.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so
you're
much.
welcome.
What is the tuition for non-resident?
Okay, so this year it's like 18,600, next year it's like 19,000 and change, 800.
So,
We go by the state average per pupil, which we think is the fairest way to do it. So the state sends us that number and that's what we work.
so we can tell our residents that per household, in an average household, they're paying $3,000 for a $19,000 education.
Correct.
I like it.
If you have a child,
If you have one child, then it's even less.
yeah,
If you.
I have 2 children.
Then you're paying $1,500.
Yeah, that would be the taxes that would go to us, correct?
It's a good value. Well,
No.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks
Really
for having
appreciate
us.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving along, we have the Fairhaven Shade Tree Commission is here with their 2023 annual report. Chris?
Evening, Mayor Halpern. And my name is Chris Larson. I'm the chairman of the Shade Tree Commission, and I'm pleased to present our 2023 annual report. First and foremost, after a number of years of work, a lot of light work, by Commissioner Jill Sullivan, the Fairhaven was awarded a $15,000 grant, which will be used towards our tree inventory, and that is a requirement for our community forestry management plan, which is due at the end of this year. I just want to point out, it was a tremendous amount of work. I think Jill deserves a tremendous amount of credit. She became a commissioner, and within one meeting, she took over this. She was, I don't know, I can't remember, you volunteered. So tremendous job. And it was a tremendous accomplishment. Going forward, staying with our motto, we want to be a tree planting commission, so we did create a resident tree buying program through Fernbrook Nursery last year. 56 new trees were planted through this program. It is ongoing this year. I think the order gates were closed for the spring planting, but last I looked, I think we were looking at a number of low 20s for trees ordered for this planting coming up in the spring. We will be doing it again in the fall as well. We again sponsored a tree giveaway. This is where the Shade Tree members voted on a property to donate from the Shade Tree Trust Fund. We planted a tree on Lake Avenue in September. We also created the Kwanzaa Cherry Tree Program to continue that iconic look down Fairhaven Road. Continue that. We're trying to encourage the residents on that road to keep up the appearance. It's a beautiful, beautiful street. 2 Kwanzaa cherry trees were planted on Fairhaven Road in September. Last year, we were engaged in various community engagement activities. We distributed door hangers regarding, various tree facts and care information. We're going to be doing that again this year. I think our focus is really going to be on the invasive ivy that can be lethal to trees. We participated again in Love Where You Live Day, again, where we handed out educational materials. We are engaged again, Arbor Day, engaged with the Sickles and Millwood students for Arbor Day activities and a poster contest. This is something we've been doing year after year for, I don't know how many. We have a online social media following of 173 people. We're hoping that number goes up. And we did begin evaluating our options for the Christmas tree, which I think we're on course to plant and replace. I'm looking forward to that. Let's see. This year, we did maintain our accreditation. That entails going to various CEU classes. 2 new members of our commission were core trained by the NJUCF. Fairhaven earned 16 CEUs this year versus the 8 required. Going forward, once again, we are here with no tree ordinance. So we are going to be pushing that, and we look forward to a nice discussion with our new liaison, Councilman Olson. We are going to be looking forward, and this is going to kind of, I don't want to dive too much into an ordinance requirement, but we do want to kind of get the message out that even if the town does take a tree down, there should be some mechanism in place to replace it, not necessarily in that specific area, but somewhere amongst the in the town. This year we attended multiple trainings this year, and we would really like to see more engagement with the DPW to attend some of these trainings. I know some of them already do go just as a requirement for their CDUs, but I think it would be great if the Shade Tree Commission and some members of the DPW were able to attend these classes together and collaborate a little bit on planting trees going forward throughout the town. As we already did submit our budget request, as you know, our budget was $12,660 last year. 65% of that was allocated towards our tree experts. We do expect a consulting line increase this year as everything else goes up. So are the costs of these consultants. as well as the cost of the education, the cost of the classes seem to be creeping up. And going forward, as we do want to engage with more community programs, we are going to need sufficient funds to create handouts and other door hangers, et cetera. That's all we have.
Thank you, Chris. I have some quick questions. If you could. You said you gave a tree giveaway from the Shade Tree Trust Fund. How much is in the fund? You know?
I don't know.
I'm happy.
Is it hundreds? Is it thousands?
It is a couple $1,000. I think it was roughly. We did get a check this year about 2,600. So I think it's about 4,000, 4,500.
So they voted on a property to donate a tree. Is that something you do once a year, or is it something
It is some,
once a year for one tree, or?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, and then you mentioned the 2 cherry trees that you put in. I think I recall that hearing that they were close to end of life, just from the age of that type of tree and how long they usually live.
The originals down.
The originals,
Yeah.
huh? So is there a plan? Has there been anything discussed as far as like, if one goes, are we planning another one?
So not in recent history, a couple of years ago, we did have quite a discussion about those cherry trees. We even met with the then our tree expert, Bill Brooks, on site. He spoke to the condition of them, pointed out some rot. It is something that will need to be discussed soon. It's just to bring you. It's not just a matter of, taking out a tree and planting a tree. The nature area, if you will, that really needs to be cut back. That was Bill Brooks's recommendation, to let sunlight coming in from the other side. Because if you notice, the trees they all grow towards the road. That's the only place they get sunlight. No sunlight's coming in from the west. So it's not just a matter of.
Deeper conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just highlighting that because on Buttonwood Drive, where, just so you know, I live there, so there's a little bit. But, I think they're both iconic streets with trees. And on Buttonwood, we had to cut a bunch of trees down, which made sense, I think for good reason, safety reasons, that these trees were no longer, gonna last beyond the years that we wanted them to. But what happened is, we took them away and we didn't really replant new trees. So I would hate for that to happen on Ferry Road, that we start losing trees and we lose that. When those flowers bloom in spring, it's pretty spectacular. So I think that's something we want to have for future generations. So I don't know how to have that conversation, but I think it's one that maybe should be discussed potentially in a future meeting, even if it means getting with Carolyn and her team with the natural area and figuring out a way to push them back, and maybe having a game plan to replace the trees, whether it's from the fund, whether it's from donations, whatever it might be. I think we should have something.
Sure.
Tree buying program. Is it possible, you said you were gonna put the door hangers on again? Is it possible to put
That's-
some? Did you
That's
say
not
that?
that's not the tree buying.
I know.
Oh,
I'm thinking, is it possible to put something about the tree buying program on the door hanger
Sure.
on one side, maybe to highlight it? I'm wondering, the only place I've seen anything about the tree buying program personally is on the buzz.
Mhm.
I think I see it on the buzz every time, but I'm not sure everyone gets the buzz. So if we,
I was gonna say, I mentioned to somebody today in the committee, I think communications could probably tag some of the Shade Tree Commission posts on the Fairhaven page, because I think everyone follows the Fairhaven Facebook page.
I was thinking, I just wrote myself a note too.
Okay, all right, at least we can help there, but maybe door hangers.
that was my last question.
No,
Who runs the Shade Tree Commission page? Is that a collective between multiple people? Okay. So do you designate one person from the commission, does the social media posts?
Leah Begani is our communications expert, our
Okay.
social media expert.
Okay, and is that, I promise I'm not picking on you. Is it a discussion between everyone like post, or you just go at it?
So we usually discuss things that we'd like to be put in.
Highlighted.
We get suggestions, tree maintenance, things that are happening in the district or, talk a lot about spotted lanternflies and identify them in the nests and get rid of them. I do make the graphics unless, we had to do some graphics that were sent to us, Arbor Day, sometimes they have, they provide graphics for that. And then we need to post to, the Fair Haven group and on our home pages, but, more engagement in the community would be great, it's just that it has to be.
Thank you. I was more trying to educate myself. There's a few different committees that do social media, and it seems like everyone does it a little bit differently, and I don't know whether we need consistency, maybe we don't, but and also interested to see how that information filters into the communications team so that, in situations like you just said, that they put something up and we can highlight it and make it more marketable to our residents. So that's all I have. I don't know if anyone else has any questions for Chris, but thank you, Chris, and the entire Shade Tree Commission for all the work that you do.
Yeah, you guys are phenomenal. I really appreciate all your hard work, and it was a pleasure to be your liaison for a couple of years. One question, which has to do with a policy consideration about removal of trees on public lands. I mean, when you're a resident, and you're asked to, you have to remove a tree or asked to replace a tree, so there's more than one. And I wanted to know, Teresa, what do we have in the budget for tree removal?
This year's budget, I have to look, I think it was 25, I'm not so sure if we used it
Stuff for last year?
for removal,
Yeah.
24's budget.
So I would assume planting a tree costs less than removing a tree.
Depends on what you're replacing with this, but
If
generally.
it's the size of a tree, I assume it's gonna be, what I'm getting at is how much would we actually need to consider allocating it for a one-to-one, if we were going to get serious about planting a tree for every time we remove a tree. Would we be looking at, half of that for replanting? We're taking them back down really big trees and it costs $25,000 a year, $12,000 to replant trees. Is a number we could consider.
You have to keep in mind that not all tree removals are done on borough property. We have liability considerations when it comes to trees in the right of way. And basically fundamentally, we go by what's called the common man standard. We keep an inventory of trees in the right of way that could be hazardous trees. And a lot of that money is dedicated to,
So we could separate,
yes.
well, we have to take.
Not
care
the
of
same
our
as taking a
trees.
tree out of Fairhaven Fields,
Sure.
it would be taking a tree out of the right of way on Lake Avenue that happened to be a hazardous tree.
Yeah, okay, so that's a fair point. And also, the number might be less than 12,000, but maybe the finance committee can track that for consideration in the budget as we move forward. Obviously, this budget, not so much,
Yeah,
but
this wasn't the budget to do that, but
no.
certainly could keep notes, I'm sure.
But I think in principle, it's hard to argue with a sensible approach, which is fair. When trees are removed from public lands, perhaps right away as an exception, that we should also plan to plant in the public to replace the tree that was removed. After all, that's the goal, keep the canopy. Thank you.
Thank you. Great work. Thank you, gang. All right,
Thank you.
moving along, we have the Fairhaven Fields Natural Area Advisory Committee, 2023 annual report. Carolyn?
Just before we start, our committee has been very interested in the cherry trees on Fairhaven Road. We've talked to other committees for a couple of years now, and we are eager to collaborate to preserve that feature, including, we've talked about planting a second row of cherry trees so that as one falls, there's something ready to go. We've also talked about pushing the fence back and clearing some of the trees on the edge, which happen to be junk trees anyway, some invasive trees. So we would be happy to collaborate on that. We'd be happy to make some of that happen. We're very eager to preserve that feature. Okay, so my name is Carolyn Ferguson. I'm the chair of the Fairhaven Fields Natural Area Advisory Committee. I'm here today to talk to you about to present our 2023 annual report. I'll talk to you a bit about what we did last year and where we're heading next year. Just a little overview, and Allison, I'm moving to page 2, thanks. I knew I forgot to put page numbers on myself. So just telling you a little bit about our committee members last year were me, Jen Spitz, who was the vice chair, Paul Ferguson, the secretary, Dave Bordelon, Ali Countryman, Mark Olson, Steve Sheehan, Meg Christner Keith, and Bonnie Tresidia. Many of our committee members are here, and I thank them for attending in person. Speaking a little bit to what you asked, Josh, pretty much we have a committee structure, and almost every one of our committee members runs a committee or two. We also have some lifetime members, Audrey Engel, Dick Fuller, and Doris Moraller. We also have some very dedicated volunteers who are dedicated enough that 2 of them are here tonight too. So that some of them join us in our meetings, and then we have a bigger crew that joins us for our volunteer day, volunteer weekend events. And during 2023, Lalini was our Borough Council liaison. Moving to page 3, just a little bit about the history of the natural area. It was set aside in 1974. That's when the land was originally procured for Fairhaven. It's 45 acres. At that time, no action was taken in the natural area, so that land was just left alone. In 1987 was when the Fairhaven Fields Natural Area Advisory Committee was formed. And following that, they established the nature trails, the parking lot and Ridge Road, and that really was the beginnings of the natural area the way we know it now. We feel like the natural area offers many benefits to the residents, including passive recreation, home to insects, animals, and trees that serve vital roles in our environment, a place for us to learn about nature, and it provides a natural source of coolness. And we do include a heat map at the end. We'll talk a little bit about that. Moving to page 4. In the natural area, the primary activities are really natural processes. However, as an ecosystem, the natural area is small, which presents some unique challenges. So the area is too small to buffer itself from the developed area around it. So if you think about birds going in and out and bringing things, in a very large natural area, the area can actually buffer itself. Small areas have unique challenges. So this area is too small to buffer itself. And also, if you think about in any year, conditions in a natural area can cause a reduction in the plant and animal species. In a large area, the amount of the species dips down, but some remain. And in the next year, they pick up and expand again. And that's what happens in a large area. In a small area, in a tough year, the amount of plant and animal species can dip down low enough that they're just gone. And once they're gone forever. So that's part of what's unique about a small natural area. And a natural area that's small like this can't really remain healthy without assistance. And it's really the job of the Natural Area Committee to advise on what kinds of assistance might help this. We do have a philosophy that we use as we work. Since the inception of the natural area, the goal has been to allow the space to be a truly natural environment. As our committee works to provide assistance, anything we do is always balanced with a desire to keep that space natural. So you'll even notice, like, we're very particular about signs and benches, you know, we try to resist that as much as we can. But we do want the area to be comfortable and useful for people. But, you know, we inherited this guidance, we respect it. We work to see it carried out and carried forward. So we're always looking to keep that space natural. Then we do have a partnership with the DPW, page 5. They collaborate closely with our committee. They do a ton of things, including they cover the trails with wood chips. They have a 3-year schedule. So every 3 years, every trail gets new wood chips. They work during our volunteer weekends with us. Our maintenance committee is Dave Bordelon. He meets monthly with them in the natural area to look at the overall state of it and talk about any maintenance that needs to be done. They also sometimes participate in our meetings, either in person or by submitting a report ahead of time. Something that we've highlighted before and we always want to highlight is that, we really feel that the Fairhaven DPW really is exceptional with the, care, their knowledge and expertise on the ecology of that area. The representatives from Monmouth County Parks have repeatedly complimented their DPW level of knowledge about the ecology of the natural area and the trees and plants that grow there. I know Dave Carl's gone out of his way to get herbicide licenses. They really are a remarkable resource for taking care of that space, and we really do appreciate it. Moving to page 6, we'll talk a little bit about what we accomplished in 2023. At the beginning of 2023, we set 6 goals. The first was to begin restoration of the northwest section of the natural area, which we accomplished. The second was to spend down the community appeal money that was set aside from the natural area, which was also accomplished. Number 3 was to honor distinguished committee members. That was not accomplished, but we're carrying that forward into 2024. Number 4 is community engagement, which was accomplished. Number 5 is to continue the partnership with Monmouth County Parks, which we accomplished. And number 5 is to improve natural area committee connection to the borough, which we feel was not accomplished, but we are hopeful that there's some minor changes that have occurred to make things better in 2024. And then just going a little deeper into some of the 2023 accomplishments. Probably the thing that's most significant for us is the restoration of the natural areas northwest section. In 2021, our annual report really identified that this area was in dire need of restoration. It was completely filled with invasives. There's a tree called Devil's Walking Stick, which just has big thick thorns on it. There was downed trees. The area it was impassable. And if you tried to crawl in there, it was really dangerous. So the area was not useful. The residents couldn't enjoy it. And additionally, it was just a place where invasives were growing, where they would spread throughout the natural area and the rest of the town. The first work took place in that area in 2022, where we asked for a border trail to be cut so we could define the border between the church property and the natural area property. As people are working in there, we feel it's very important for them to know when they're on the borough property versus the church property. And honestly, every time we go in there, there's confusion about it. I think other people have been there and we sit there waving our arms and it goes on over and over. So this border trail is very significant. Also, it will create a break between the vines on the church property and the natural area. 2023, we were able to take a major step forward. We used $20,000 of the community appeal donations to have that area professionally cleared. And if you've been back there now, you see that it's empty. They took out just an unbelievable amount of fallen wood, vines. They got vines out of the tops of trees. So we had some big trees that were actually lovely trees, cottonwoods. They were filled with vines and they were able to clear them out. So now these trees will be able to thrive. We've also consulted with Monmouth County Parks on this. They're doing a similar restoration project in Hartshorn Woods. And they're a little bit ahead of us, and they've been able to give us really tremendous guidance about what are the right steps to take, what are the order of things to be done. You know, that's something we don't know, we're just people. But they're professionals and they've really just given us, you know, a list of things to do and we listen to them. So they've been extraordinarily helpful with that restoration area. Then the other thing that was significant for us in 2023 was to spend down the community appeal money. At the beginning of 2023, the balance we had was $27,000. We get about $5,000 a year from the community appeal. Everybody was in wide agreement that that was not a good situation. Like, we don't want people donating money and then just holding it in an account. People donate it because they want to make a difference and do good work in that area. So we really challenged ourselves that we wanted to spend it down. And sometimes you get this feeling like we should hold on to some, but we're like, no, we need to spend it all the way down. So we started out with $27,000. We spent $20,000 to clear the restoration area. We spent $2,500 to buy wildflower seeds that were planted in the meadow. We spent $2,300 and purchased 51 native species bushes that we planted with wire fencing to protect them from deer. So that got us, pretty much down to, under $5,000. And we will continue to try to spend that money each year. Additionally, our accomplishments included community engagement. We hosted 2 volunteer weekends, 1 nature walk. We posted for educational information in the kiosk and on our social media channels. We continued our partnership with Monmouth County Parks. And then also a few smaller things. We participated in Love Where You Live Day. We repaired a wooden bench in Morales Meadow. And we've tried to develop a friendly relationship with the church that shares a border with the natural area. As I mentioned, their property is full of vines, and we're trying to educate them a little about their property and encourage them to manage their vines a little bit. And that's turned into a very friendly relationship, which is nice. Then on page 9, turning to goals for 2024, we've set 5 goals for ourselves. The first is to continue the project to restore the northwest section of the natural area. The second is Dick Fuller made a great observation that this year is 50 years of Fairhaven Fields. I guess it was named 50 years ago, it was procured 51 years ago. But we're going to try to engage with some of the other committees and tie into some of the events that happen every year in town, and hope that we can get a little townwide celebration of 50 years of Fairhaven Fields going. We feel like, if we think about that space and how much we all use it and what it means to our community, we really feel it's worth celebrating. Number 3 is the goal we brought forward to honor distinguished committee members. Jim Ingle was the first chair of the Natural Area Committee. He served on it from 1987 until he died in 2022. We hope to honor him in the natural area, perhaps like a rustic bench with a small plaque. We will, of course, come here and ask for permission before we put anything permanent there, but that's what we're thinking about. Number 4 is to improve committee collaboration with the borough, which is an item we brought forward. And number 5 is to develop a plan to begin tackling invasives in the north section of the natural area. So that's actually an area that really hasn't gotten much maintenance or attention in recent history. So we want to develop a plan to get in there and start working on some of the invasives in that area too. Moving to page 10, we, as usual, have a few requests for the Borough Council. The first one is add curbs on Fairhaven Road along the Cherry Tree area. This is something that's been in our annual report since 2021, and I believe you guys actually have a plan to work on this soon, which is great. The goal of that is to prevent water flowing down Buttonwood right into the natural area, which causes erosion in the pine tree area of the natural area. The second is the deer overpopulation, which I know you've heard a ton about. This is also something that's been in our annual reports for the last few years. The destruction of the understory in the natural area has been observed by our committee members. It's also been observed by the representatives from Monmouth County Parks. And we provide a little diagram on the right, and it really kind of shows how a healthy forest is supposed to behave. So you have big mature trees. The understory is like the lower layer. That should consist of younger versions of the big trees. So, every windstorm, we lose at least a tree or two of big tree in the natural area. But the idea is when a mature tree comes down, there should be a young tree ready to shoot up and take its place. Unfortunately, at this point, the deer have eaten our young trees. So what we're left with is when the mature trees fall, there's really nothing to replace it. I think we see that in a really even more significant way in the Harding Bird Sanctuary, but we're seeing the same thing in the natural area. And, we've talked about how much we value this forest. We really want to preserve it and have it sustain and move forward. Then number 3 is just the item for improving committee collaboration with the borough. Our members are eager to contribute. They want to feel like their time is well spent. We're very eager to serve the community and serve the taxpayers. We feel collaborating closely with the borough is the best way for both sides to get a lot of value. We think there's a few things that we could possibly improve. The first thing is just clarifying how the committee will report our status to the Borough Council and get direction back, like we work for you. recently we began providing monthly reports to the Borough Council, and we think maybe that will be a good, step forward on this. Then item B is we've kind of become aware that sometimes the borough has information about the natural area that we don't get. And that we were not, you know, like, we're not saying, we're just saying, if you have information, could you just shoot us a copy? So an example of that is like the DEP came out to do the Green Acres inspection, and they give a report. But like a report like that, could that be shared with our committee so we could get their expertise also? Also, we've learned that there are individuals or groups that pay a license to Fairhaven to hold an activity in the natural area. And that actually happens with some volume. But like, we didn't know that was happening, and it's fine that it's happening, but it would be the kind of thing we'd like to be aware of as we consider.
Can you give me an example of that? Because I'm not aware of that.
Yeah,
type of
mine
thing.
either.
Yeah, I guess there's like, it's a small business that operates out of the church, Sticks and Sprouts. It's a young woman, has a business taking kids into the natural area.
They have yet to be approved officially by, our boards, or planning board. And, they have not paid a license to the borough. We don't have a mercantile license or anything, we're collecting money from.
Yeah, I understand that they pay, I think she showed me, they pay like $60 or something per event to take kids into the natural area. And I could easily be wrong, but this is what was explained to me.
We're waiting to see when they finally come before the board. You know, some of that stuff was done informally, just like a temporary usage, but the permanent use is a different story.
Have we charged for use of the natural area?
To the best of my knowledge, I think that they had originally had asked, you know, to use facilities form on a couple of occasions
That's what. it is.
before they, you know, it became known that they were gonna be a regular business. So DJ would handle like in the use of facilities form, you know,
Huh.
so, but I don't believe that's still ongoing. They are scheduled, I believe, to go before the planning board very soon.
Right, so I guess anyone could pay to use our borough's facilities, right? And that's
Depends on
what
what
this
the
falls
usage is.
under, yeah. So, just, yeah, we're saying when things like that happen, if we could just kind of be made aware of it somehow. We're trying to advise on this area, and we'd like to have all the information we could. Item C is just a request, maybe we could establish a single point of contact with the borough. We've mentioned sometimes our interactions with the borough become confusing. And we've asked for the 2 hours of time, which we understand, that hasn't happened yet. But even beyond that, if it could just be some sort of single point of contact. What happens is each time we have some sort of interaction, it's a different person. The interactions take both sides much longer than they should. We think somebody who could just take our emails and drop them into a folder and then have some context the next time interaction occurs, that both sides would be able to work much more effectively. And then just the last request is to continue the DPW participation in our meetings and at our volunteer weekends. And just in conclusion, I want to say thank you personally and on behalf of the Fairhaven to the Natural Area Committee. They not only plan and execute projects, but on any given day, you can find one or more of them doing physical labor in the natural area. Their level of concern and care for the natural area and Fairhaven in general is really very high. We estimate that our committee members donate 800 hours a year of work. And we believe that we coordinate an additional 500 hours of time donated by the public at our volunteer weekends. When you add that together, it's 0.6 of a person or a full-time employee. So we think that's significant. We encourage you to harness it and put it to good use. As I said, we're eager to do good work and to help you guys accomplish your goals. And then I want to say thank you to the Borough Council for your consideration of our report. Our committee looks forward to growing our partnership with the borough so that we can work effectively to protect, preserve the natural area so that it remains an ecological and recreational asset for Fairhaven and that generations to come can continue to enjoy it. And then the last thing is just I'm sharing in an appendix a heat map of Fairhaven. And this is something was shared with us last year. I honestly don't know the source of it. I will try to find that out and share it with you. But if, there's just really, two things I'll point out. The big blue dot is the natural area. And, you know, it just reminds us of the importance of forests and trees in, keeping an area cool. And if you look on the left, you'll see the orange dot, which is really the West Side Business District, and especially the Acme Shopping Center. So you really do see the effect of trees. We know the Acme Shopping Center, there aren't trees in it. So we just want to emphasize that, the natural area really is, providing an important ecological role in our town.
Where do you get that?
Yeah, that's.
I don't know, actually,
I remember someone.
somebody gave it to us last year.
Yeah,
I think
it's pretty cool.
environmental commission, I think we had that, didn't we?
Yeah, it came up there too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where we got it. I will try to find out though and let you know exactly where it came from.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was
Sure.
fantastic. I only have two things.
Great.
The first one, maybe I shouldn't bring up, but I can't help myself. Has there been any discussion? I know what originally the committee was established for, being the Fairhaven Fields natural area. Has there been any discussion about the Harding Sanctuary and the Third Street Trail becoming part of that committee, overseeing it more formally? I understand it's the same people that sort of move back and forth, but has there ever been any discussion about that? Just because I understand how it was set up years ago, but it just seems like common sense to me. If the mission is the same, to get rid of the invasives and upkeep and, you know, make sure that the young trees are growing and as the old trees fall, to me, it would make sense at a certain point to maybe put those together.
Yeah, what has come up is, could the Third Street Trail be joined into the committee? We discussed that. It never came up about the Hardingburg Sanctuary. And we've had interesting conversation about it. I think we were always concerned about, like, we kind of have our hands full with the piece we have, and we were very cautious about taking on something extra, but we do understand that there is a common mission, and I think I could envision a world where that might make sense, you know. It would certainly take some planning on our parts, you know.
And then the other one, maybe we don't want to go there, but you know, Northwest area
Yeah.
is such a boring name. Like, have we thought about like renaming it Inglewood? Like, and that's a way to potentially honor someone that, something like that, instead of the bench, and then we keep the area more natural. It's
Yeah.
an idea.
Yeah, we have not talked about a different name for that area. Just so you know, a little bit of history, there was a little spot called the Ingle Nook, which had a sign for Jim and Audrey Ingle on it. And it's the tree that's fallen. It's in the middle of the natural area, and people put the little dolls and fairies in it. So that's what used to be the Ingle Nook.
Yes, during
But the tree fell.
COVID, that was the coolest thing ever, when it fell, and yeah, that was pretty.
But it fell down.
Any other questions?
Just have one quick question. Is the natural fields, committee, are we coordinating with the environmental commission on the deer management program? Because I know both groups have talked about it.
Let me just throw in also, before she answers, we have, Allison, what's the date?
May 13th.
May 13th, we have,
Okay.
The DEP.
Oh, great.
DEP.
Never mind.
That's great.
Yep.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
So one thing, great job. There's a sample of the report in your packet, the monthly report. And that's, you know, that was, I think the mayor's idea of, trying to, get the information out to people and do it in an efficient way, so these meetings can move along.
I have one question. For some reason, I remember someone telling me that part of the reason that the natural fields weren't connected to Third Street Trail was that because of the funding or something with open space. Is there any?
Well, one thing I could think of is that, well, I don't know about the official Green Acres designations of the different parts. The natural area does get funding from the community appeal. So like if there was ever going to be a change like that, I think we would want to go to them. Like, we always try to be very clear that the money we're giving is for the natural area. So like, we don't take one of our trees and stick it on the Third Street Trail.
Sure.
Because we're like, people gave us this money for the natural area. So that's one little financial issue that we would.
But I think it has something to do with the Green Acres too, where that's designated the Green Acres and maybe Natural Fields is, or the Third Street Trail.
No, it's all Green Acres.
It's all Green Acres, so that wouldn't be an issue. Okay.
Yeah, and my intention is certainly not to take more resources away from the natural area and water, water out the resources. I think it was more to make a deeper impact in all of those areas. Something maybe we can discuss. I don't really have an answer for you right now. I was just curious whether it's been discussed.
Yeah, if you ever want to come talk to our committee about it, we're nice, we'd love to talk about it. And like I said, we really are eager to collaborate and,
Great.
Meet your goals too.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you to the entire committee and all the volunteers.
Yeah.
I much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving along, workshop, we have a request for lawn signs from the Jersey Shore Youth Rugby Association from April first to the 22nd. Does anyone have any questions on that? Anyone have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We are now moving along to the public comment on agenda items. This is for agenda items only. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please do observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public with a agenda item comment only? No. Allison, anyone online?
Mrs. O'Brien.
Good evening. As you know, I go to all the meetings. I've been to a number of meetings at Bicentennial Hall. And I'd like to make a suggestion since you're going for a grant at this point. I think it really needs automatic lights at the entrances. Because what happens when you're leaving is somebody has to stay inside and turn off the lights.
Bicentennial Hall?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry, I didn't hear you. It's my mistake, Susan. Okay.
So we know that lights.
so
Yeah,
that would be true for all the entrances. Because, if you get there before somebody comes to open up, it's dark. At least if there were automatic lights, you wouldn't be standing there in the dark.
Yeah, lighting and from a facility standpoint, that has been identified and added to a punch list of work items. And I also know that for the ADA scope of work, low-level balance style lights will be implemented as part of those improvements too. Because you're right, it needs to be lit, but lit sensitively because it's in a residential area or partially residential. It's a fair observation.
Motion lights. Some people are moving.
It could be.
The only thing with motion lights is, they could be distracting to their neighbors. So you gotta be a little bit careful with those, but it's good feedback. I think it's something we'll definitely get on top of as we look at the restoration.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Susie. Elsa, anyone else?
Yes.
All right, we're good. Moving along to approval of minutes. We're talking about the February 26th, 2024 regular meeting, the March 11th, 2024 executive session as well. Oh, let's start with February 26th. I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Maselli,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Okay, March 11th, 2024 executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Maselli,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Thank you. March 15th, 2024 special meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Maselli.
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along, old business, hearing and adoption of ordinances, ordinance number 2024-03, amend description for bond ordinance number 2023-17. Do I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone up here that has anything on this? Is there anyone in the public? There's a comment on ordinance number 2024-03. No, do I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Paul? Yes. Sally?
Yes.
Howie?
Yes.
Koch?
Yes.
Rivera?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2024-04, index rate ordinance, COLA. Do I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone up here have anything on this? No? Anyone in the public comment on this? Allison, nothing?
No.
Do I have a motion to close?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Paul? Yes. Sally?
Yes.
Howie?
Yes.
Koch?
Yes.
Rivera?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along, historic site management grant application for Bicentennial Hall. This was carried from the March 11th meeting. Which I heard you all did a fantastic job, and I told her, I had just people glowing about Borough Council President Koch. The job she did. I just have to say, yes. Tracy,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole.
Okay, I'll try to keep this brief. This is a reminder, this is a report coming out of the grants committee, so Michael, Councilwoman Sally, chime in where you feel appropriate. This was a grant application that was summarized and submitted to council at our last meeting. We did kind of run out of time, we touched on it. And what it is, it's called the State Historic Office of Preservation has a fund called the Historic Site Management Fund. And you can apply for up to $5,000 to $75,000. And the purpose of this fund is to create a community-driven strategic plan that outlines the usage and overall management of a historic property, in this case, Bicentennial Hall, Fairhaven's only public historic property, which also happens to be on the National Register of Historic Places and the State Register of Historic Places. We're also, as it turns out, we're on a Black Heritage Trail. County and the state, and we applied for the signage for the county. That application is in, you approved it at the last meeting. So when we touched on this grant, and I should point out that the Bicentennial Hall stakeholders meeting is just at this moment in time, asking the question of what is the purpose of this particular property and what is its highest best use in the community and how can it fulfill its true value as a public historic structure. This particular fund would allow us the funds to hire the professionals to pursue that question with the community and generate the plan, and even at a more granular level, the programmatic elements, whether it's events or curriculum or other sort of archived thing. We don't know, we have to get to that point, but a more granular level of programming that would help express this Bicentennial Hall role in history and in Fairhaven. So, where do we leave off? At our last meeting, council had questions, most particularly, what would it cost to apply for this grant? So, thanks to Teresa, arranged a meeting today. We met with Colliers, who has the capacity, the in-house professional capacity to prepare a grant and actually to do the work. And I'll just pass this around. There's one for everyone. This is simply an authorization form, which is the method they chose based on the meeting today, for a not to exceed amount of $5,200 to prepare the grant application. Did everybody get them?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. The application itself is pretty straightforward. The time it will take to assemble the parts and upload them and properly combine them and format them was assessed by the committee, one of whom our members is a grant person, to be too much for a volunteer, and that's why we have a proposal for the council to consider. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out at this point. We don't know the total cost and scope of the work. There'll be a 25% commitment on the part of the borough. We do have a funding partner in the form of our Historic Association of Fairhaven, who's very committed to this work. They feel like it would be the next right step, and it does dovetail very well with where we're at with the stakeholder group. So, they're prepared to support the match in order to make the work happen. So I think I could stop there. Maybe Councilwoman Dinizelli, do you want to add anything?
No, you said it really well. Again, we're on the stakeholders meeting, we go to stakeholders meeting as well, and this is very much in line with the next steps. So I think that it's funding that we will ultimately putting, or some money that would have come out of our pockets anyway. So if we could get some help with this, I think it would line up.
I'll add that if I may. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I thought of something. We're not a 70, you could apply for up to from 5 to 75. We're not a $5,000 piece of work, and we're not a 75,000. So $75,000 might be for a healthy building, cultural arts center that's considering, its next 10-year plan, and they might have traffic and transportation considerations and things of a higher magnitude. But we're not a 5,000. We would probably be somewhere in the middle or to the lower end of the middle, which might put us somewhere around 25. It's unknown at this time, but we can also estimate it and even curate the work to fit a budget that we feel like we're comfortable with.
And also probably worth noting that this not to exceed, I also spoke with another grant writing company. And they came back with about 3,400, 4,500. So this number is probably not where we're gonna hit, but this is just gives us a sort of high level,
An outside.
an outside number.
So questions, we're asking for the 5,200 or so for the grant writing, yeah?
Yeah, that's for the application.
And is that, Teresa, do you think, is that capital or operating?
No,
Or
it would have to come out of your current fund budget.
I'm sorry?
It would have to come out of your current fund budget.
No, from budget.
What's the-
The 2024 budget.
And that would come out of the professionals, or that would be.
It's not currently budgeted. If the governing body decides to move forward tonight, I would go back into the document and add to the engineering consulting line, which we already cut by $2,500, and would have to add money to that and then take it from someplace else.
I did have a chance to consult with the board, knowing I saw your email about having to move money around. Which I realize is probably challenging with this budget, even if it is only a few $1,000s. The board of the Historic Association is open to fronting the application fee, that if awarded, they would get reimbursed in 2025. That way we would know what the number is, because this wouldn't be awarded until 2025. It'd be awarded in the fall of 2024 to hit our budget in 25, which is when the work would take place. So
I don't think we can reimburse an outside entity for a 2024 expenditure in the 2025.
well, you
budget.
would, if you were looking to that same partner for a 25% match, you would just reduce the amount of the match to reflect the
So what
application.
you're saying is that the 25% match would be, let's just say you went for the max and that would
Which
be.
we wouldn't, we've already stated it wouldn't be.
But it's easier for the purposes of calculating. If it was a $75,000 grant, 56,250 would come from the grant and 18,750 would come from the historic fundraising arm of this. You'd say that would be deducted by that $5,200 for argument's sake.
Whatever that.
And the borough would have to put $5,200 in the 2025 budget towards this.
Right.
I really have to speak with the CFO. I think you need some agreement on that. I don't know how it actually work.
You would just know what the number is. Not
We should-
sure it's a problem.
That part of it, I think we could probably figure out. Nancy, you don't have any feedback on that, do you?
So as far as paying, as Teresa said, as far as paying them back, we cannot do that. If they are agreeing, if the agreement is that they will partner with us and fund the match, then they are funding the match. If not, the borough is funding part of the match, and they will fund the other, but we cannot term it as we're repaying them for the grant application. That we cannot do. So we either take it on as a borough expense, or they pay it with with the understanding that they're not gonna get, that money back.
Or they would just reduce
They could
the
reduce
amount
their match,
of the match.
but we can't,
I follow you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if they choose to reduce their match, then it's up to you guys if you choose to move forward with that.
Mhm.
But that would be what it is. There would be no payback.
Understood.
If they reduce their match, then we have to cover the difference, right?
Which
Up
would
to
be equal to the amount of
$5,200.
that application fee.
Pardon me?
Yes, it would be equal to the amount of the application fee. No, higher than, I think it's gonna be less than this, because this is a not to exceed number.
So that first question for me is, they have checked off per diem or hourly,
Yeah,
but do we know what their rate is?
yes.
I think we pay them, I'm gonna say $1.50
Depending
back.
on who's doing the work, it's
Yeah,
anywhere
it's-
between 130 and 160.
Yeah,
I'm 30 and 160, okay. And it's not to exceed 5,200,
Mhm.
that's out of pocket. Correct? That's out of the borough's pocket. We're
Borough
not
would have
getting
to have a
reimbursed
purchase
by
order.
anyone for that. That's on us.
the borough's got a purchase order for them for that amount.
That's for them to apply for this grant, correct? Okay. I was not here last meeting.
I know, I'm sorry.
I'm apologizing to everyone. The grant is for the planning, not for actual improvements.
It's for, I'll read it to you. It's for, to foster sound planning and stewardship of historic properties, to broaden public awareness and enjoyment of historic sites. Eligible activities include production of documents, reports, planning for preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation, programming of historic properties, engineering plans and maintenance plans, development of education, and showcase programs, which is, I want to emphasize, because that's a key component. Program elements are not just planning. This, for example, we talked about having a curriculum component to work with the schools, so field trips can happen at that location. This could be how we achieve that in collaboration with schools, of course, but this would give us the funds to do that work.
So we can
Okay.
use that money for that.
Correct, right here, so.
My only thing here is, it sounds like if we were to go for the max, we're investing, unless we're able to do what you said, we're investing $24,000 for the benefit of $57,000. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Well, I really think you're using the wrong numbers. Teresa used 75,000 because it's the max. I don't believe that's realistic.
That would be the highest, right?
Yeah, and it
But-
doesn't apply to one building on one lot in one small town. It's for much larger facilities that have large scale regional planning issues.
But right now, we don't know what that amount is, correct?
That's true. We don't have an estimate. We have some things that were talked about today.
Can we get the estimate before we actually contract for the grant?
We will know because they need that number to apply. So the due date is April 14th. So they will have the estimate prior to that date. And our next council meeting is the 8th. So, well, we could hope to have it by then.
How are they gonna
Is there a
ascertain-
guarantee we win the grant?
No, but we have all of the characteristics of a winning grant application. Because
So,
of all our previous
but
designations.
the ratio kind of stays the same though. So like if we ask for $50,000, then we're investing 17.7 for about $38,000.
The ratio of what we invest versus what we get back. If-
Right.
Because it's a percentage of it.
It's high, because it's a fixed 5,200, the higher amount that we go for, the 75 is
Better.
more favorable. And as you
Right.
shrink it, then it gets less favorable. Not saying
Right.
it's not bad, but it gets less favorable.
So I guess that's my, I mean, I love the idea of restoration of Bicentennial Hall. I'm just wondering if the juice is worth the squeeze. I'm putting the $5,200 into Colliers. And maybe not 5,200, maybe it's less, obviously. And then it sounds like we don't really have a definitive idea of what we're doing here.
Well, that's,
Am I reading that
but I
wrong?
think that's what
What
this
planning is, you said?
essentially,
Right.
yes.
But once we have a plan, we still have to pay for it. That grant's not gonna pay for the entire plan, so there's gonna be an additional amount of cash that's going to be required to execute the plan.
Yes.
Well, keep in mind though, there are deliverables associated with this, they're not just a plan.
Right, like the school component you said, I get
Yeah.
that.
There's
What
some
about
even
the story
architect too,
mapping?
like, not the architect, the engineer, like, we could,
Mhm.
could this funding go towards ultimately the hiring of professionals?
It's what it is for.
Right, so then those are deliverables because that's money. we
Right,
would
but
have.
then that engineer is going to have to spend money to bring the building up to the plan.
But isn't that our plan ultimately anyway,
Well,
with
yeah,
the building?
exactly, and this is funding the next step. We already have a commitment to do the building. We already have a punch list that sets forth what those action items are. This is coming at the exact same time when we're asking the big question about the purpose and role and function of the building within the community, which, you know, should be facilitated professionally, and to include the whole community or anybody who cares to participate. But it doesn't necessarily obligate us to any expenditure. If anything, you could look at it as we would be spending a very little bit of money to get a document and some plans that are of value for a very, very, very long time. That would then provide the basis for people who do raise money, like the Historic Association, to build a case for what we're raising money for next, whether it's for an education program or for some archival stuff, or for, you know, these are things I can think of, but the process might yield all sorts of other interesting programmatic elements that I haven't thought of. There was a story map idea that came up in the meeting today that sounded quite fascinating, using GIS, and it's a digital system that allows you to tour and get all sorts of information through your phone, something we've talked about in the past, but this doesn't obligate us to any additional expenditures. It's a consensus plan also that provides us a way to take next steps.
Is this an annual, has this been going out annually and this is just our cutoff for this year?
I'm not
Like
aware
this
of
is
it.
just a one-time?
That's what I'm looking at right now, actually, I'm trying to figure out.
The reason I'm asking, when are we, Teresa, we have an idea when we're
Yeah.
scheduled to do the work on the,
Hasn't gone out to bid yet,
hasn't
but
got,
we have a narrow window coming up because we only got a 6-month extension from CDBG.
But ideally, we've talked about it,
2016, I'm sorry, that's when I started.
was doing
every year?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. go ahead.
was doing the ADA work this year as well as punch list items. And then putting us in a position to do this next level of work, which all I can tell you is the stakeholder. Do you want to talk about this? a little
Then
bit?
I will, and I just want to parse it out though, right? Because the step that we're talking about is what is the long-term use of
Mhm.
Bicentennial Hall, and then what management is required from a historical perspective, right? That's what we talked at the stakeholder group. This is 3 pieces. So this is the preservation needs for Bicentennial Hall. It's long-term planning for the operations and programs of the site, right? So it's, and then it's to broaden public awareness and enjoyment at the historic sites. So those are the 3 main pieces that I'm reading in the first paragraph here.
Mhm.
Does that get at what we want Bicentennial Hall to be? Like, are we? Because the 4 components of the plan is ADA, punch list, design phase, in order to see if we want to do any enhancements to it, and then the long-term maintenance plan,
Right.
right? So those are the 4 components that we're currently working on Bicentennial Hall. The one that we've been discussing is how do we prepare the long-term historic maintenance plan, right? The 10-year plan that was done 10 years ago, maybe?
Yeah,
take-
not 12.
Well, so is this going to do that and more?
I think this gets us 2 and 3 of those 4 things that you just described.
So the design considerations for the building,
Mhm.
and then the 10-year historical maintenance plan?
Yeah,
Is the idea, forgive me, but Did something happen specifically at Bicentennial Hall related to Black Heritage, or are you thinking this would be like the focal point for what's happening in our community with Black Heritage? Like, was there a specific?
It was
event?
historic as a chapter. It was the original, it's one of the oldest Black churches, I think, in
So
New
just
Jersey.
That, okay.
And it was physically moved from where it was to where it is now. Yes.
This says, sorry. Nonprofit organizations are not eligible to apply for projects that benefit churches and houses of worship. But we're not,
It's not-
that's government, we're government.
And it's not benefiting a house of worship because it's not a current house of worship,
Okay,
right?
right,
Wait, did we just switch from one grant to the other in this conversation?
no.
There's two in there. I
I think
it
it's the
too.
wrong one.
Yeah.
From last, that was the one, you weren't here, but this is.
Oh, this is.
We
this already
approved it
happened.
at the last.
That one's, okay.
Yeah, and
Can I-
it's
Let's discuss
just
the
for
next.
signs and.
Can I take a step back though? So in your eyes, I'm just gonna ask this, how were we doing the next step? How is it being executed? Were we gonna hire professionals and would we put money out for it? And what would that have been?
So two separate things, right? So the design considerations, we want to have that discussion at the stakeholder meeting, right? The maintenance plan, we were looking to get quotes for how much it would cost for professional come in. We have a suggested range, but we're waiting on one final cost, for the professional to see what it would do to do the 10-year historical maintenance. From the research that's been done, there are a few key items that are of historical significance. One on the punch list being painting the building. There's
Yeah.
actually historical significance
Yep.
associated with painting, right? So two separate things. One, what is the professional cost to produce a updated maintenance plan for Bicentennial Hall that takes into consideration the historical components, number one. Separate is what do we want Bicentennial Hall as a facility to be in Fairhaven? Because then that will potentially inform other design and considerations that we make to the building. So for example, if we wanted to host governing body meetings there, right? It probably is not suited right now for governing body meetings. So that would require design work and planning to figure out how to convert that. Not saying that's what we're gonna do. I'm picking a very extreme example. Just want to be on the record for that. So two separate things.
So this grant could cover those two things. If you're already saying that you've gotten some cost estimates, pricing for the long-term, professional come in, the long-term maintenance plan, that would give us that. And then also what we want to do, it could cover us seeking counsel from the community. It would cover those costs as well. So two things that are already on our list to do that we will ultimately pay for anyway,
Yes.
this could fund.
Well, are
That's
you
high
talking
free.
about? You were saying maintenance, you mean maintenance costs?
No,
Okay.
an
okay.
actual
maintenance
plan.
Got it.
So the
plan.
the
Okay.
plan that we discussed here was do the
Okay.
80 upgrades, do the punch list, get Bicentennial Hall to a maintainable state,
Got it,
so we can actually maintain it.
okay.
And all of the monies for that, right, we have the 400 grand, I can't remember, three, off the top of my head, whatever, it's 374,
Right. okay.
right? Then it was, okay, there was a plan 12 years ago created to say, how do you maintain Bicentennial Hall as a historical building? And we wanted to go back and have that updated.
I see.
We have an estimate and a range of what that is,
Mhm.
right? So that would be step 3.
Mhm.
And then step 4 is what type of building do we want Bicentennial Hall to be?
Mhm.
And then based on that input from the community,
Right,
then we go about designing those changes.
okay.
So. I don't
So
know if you want me to tell
we
you
would
what the range
want
is.
community input on what we're trying to achieve, right?
Yes.
So we would have some sort of open house or some sort of conversation with the community around what they would like to do with Bicentennial Hall?
Sure, that's part of it, yeah.
And probably possibly a professional who has worked with historic buildings that could help us come up with this plan as well. And it's worth noting, and you said it, but this is the only public historic building in Fairhaven. And it has gotten to a point because of lack of maintenance that we're sort of in the position we're in. So this long-term maintenance plan would help us avoid that and up with future cost.
The long-term maintenance plan though, right, is one small piece though of
Yes.
this, right? I would actually bifurcate the two. Because we don't have the second cost. I don't want to speculate on what the range is. I'm not gonna say it here, but. We know what the cost is to do roughly the 10-year maintenance plan. I think we need to bifurcate the two because. Then this would mean that we won't even be able to start the long-term maintenance planning until spring of next year, which is another year when the building isn't gonna be maintained, question mark.
No.
But that's my thing.
This is the year where we do the work so that, I think the timing is actually perfect. And you and I were on different ends of this discussion, I don't know, 3 months ago, but I've come to view it the same way you originally did, which is to get it to a maintainable state
Mhm.
and then have that conversation. I wanted to have the conversation about, what sort of role does it play in the facilities conversation comprehensively now, but the truth is, you can't do it all at the same time.
I agree.
So-
I'm in agreement with you. What I'm saying is I don't think we should tie the long-term maintenance plan to this, right? I understand that the timing works and I agree, but preservation needs for bicentennial, got it, enhanced long-term planning for the ops and programs, and then broaden public awareness and enjoyment of historic sites. 2/3 of this grant is focused on the programming of the facility, right? So I'm saying if we look at them separate, right, the heart of this grant is to focus on the programming and the purpose of Bicentennial Hall, not the long-term maintenance plan.
I agree with that.
Right.
But that information will inform the long-term maintenance plan.
Oh, yeah, 100% agree, but I don't want this to be,
Yeah.
to anyone to think that this is meant to support the long-term maintenance plan.
That's what, okay.
Because the cost of that, and again, I don't have the second professional cost, is a fraction.
Right. Okay, that's what I was trying.
Well,
So are you concerned that if we put both of them together in the grant, that it will somehow prohibit us from being able to?
What I'm saying is, let's say hypothetically, the long-term maintenance plan, the updated 10-year plan costs $1,500, hypothetically.
Okay.
Is it worth to
Got
spend
it.
$5,200 on a $1,500 plan? If we're going to invest 25 grand to do the planning and figuring out what type of building we want the bicentennial hall to be and outline the stages and help with the open houses and the public engagement, yeah, that's where I think the money is worth justifying it, not on, you're spending 5,200 on something that
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh,
So what are you suggesting, Councilman?
I love the idea of the grant. The one thing that gives me the pause and why I'm saying what I'm saying is because of the $5,200. So I think the focus of the grant needs to be on the programming of Bicentennial Hall and what we want that facility to be and represent in our town. I think if it's focused there and decoupled from the long-term maintenance plan, I think it then would be easily justifiable, because if hypothetically the long-term maintenance plan was $1,500, why are we gonna spend $5,200 on a grant to pay towards a $1,500 10-year maintenance plan? That, to me, economics just don't make sense.
But if it's part of this, and it's just funding that we're getting, then there's no downside to it.
There's no downside unless we clearly know what we're buying.
I can see how the timing is gonna lend itself to decoupling them. Because the way the work would time out, we would get the results of this process, assuming we get awarded and we retain the services, and we get the results of that process in time to incorporate it into the long-term maintenance report that is gonna be a useful roadmap for work, whether DPW does it or we have to hire a professional for certain, or an artisan or something for certain kinds of work, but I get that.
Because I think the planning of this is a lot bigger
Yeah,
than folks.
You are gonna need to define a scope of work to apply for the grant, so you know how much to
Mhm.
apply for.
mhm. I think they talked about doing a kickoff meeting if the council approves it to do just that. It's also pretty well scoped in the wording of the grant.
There's also the possibility of spending $5,000 on a grant writer and not getting the grant.
Yeah, that's a possibility. We
That's a
do
risk.
meet all of the. We meet all, we are a state has, we check all the boxes. That's all I can tell
But
you.
you know, if, If you went for $40,000, like you said, it's not gonna be 75, it's not gonna be 5.
30, maybe, yeah, it's a guess.
Okay, well, even use the easy numbers, 40.
Sure.
So
We'd be paying
25%.
$15,000 for $25,000
Yeah,
of you.
I don't know if that's financially, you're the math wizard.
You're a math teacher.
I know. Which is why I'm science teacher. But anyway, so I mean, I think that's a risk for a little reward.
That's my problem. It's not the purpose and the function of the grant and the benefit. It's just the financial investment. It doesn't seem like the juice is worth the squeeze.
So what financial investment is the council considering in that? Given that point, are you talking about spending? Because I didn't hear in any of this discussion that those funds would be
Like if you-
provided by, through tax laws. I
But
heard that it's coming from the Historic Association.
if you, like, let's say you only went for $20,000,
Yeah,
right? We'd be paying $10,200 basically, because we have to pay 25% of the 20,000 for,
well,
Yeah.
every grant costs something. So
Perfect.
you need to
yeah, but it's
demonstrate.
$10,200 for $15,000. What I'm saying is, a lot of the grants that we get $75,000 for $75,000, and that's the beauty of the grant. And, and those are spends that we absolutely 100% have to have, and we know that we have to have them. I'm not saying we don't have to have this, but right now on, what's today, March 25th, I don't know what we're using this money on, spending on it specifically. And that's what's good. Do we have time to go another meeting and still do this and have Colliers? Can
I
we
think
table it
I'll-
one more meeting?
No,
basically,
would need
Do we have time?
The grant is due April 18th at 4 p.m. Next meeting is April 8th. And that would only be to approve the grant writer at that next meeting.
You're such a dream breaker.
Well, I will say that, how much money is in the budget for planning? Zero.
Exactly.
Zero. And that was the case last year and the year before.
No, it's not
And we play our professionals. I'm not saying we don't pay our professionals. But, for us to be able to find a planning grant, which would cost a little bit of money, mind you, Mayor, they're not tax dollars. They're resident contributions towards a cause that they believe in.
How are they not? I don't understand why they're not tax dollars.
The Historic Association is a private not-for-profit.
Right, and they're gonna subsidize the $5,200.
That's what was just said here.
No, I think it was two different things. There was a part of it that they would subsidize the 25% is what you originally said, right? And now we're talking about whether or not they can put the money up front for the grant writer and get that back. So
And Nancy said we
we
can't.
can't, right? So that's the question.
Well, okay, you could ask one question. Is the potential for a $30,000 planning grant, when we don't have any planning money, worth $5,000?
Wait,
Knowing
are
it's gonna be less.
That's the risk. The risk is we're trying to come up with a plan at the historic
Mhm.
commission, right, or the historic stakeholders meetings. But we don't have any money in the budget, even if we want to move forward with that, right?
Right.
Is that what I understand? And so this work, regardless of whether we want to do it, isn't gonna happen until 2025, regardless, if we don't have it in the budget now. So this is a solution or a way of possibly being able to fund planning so that we can execute the next steps.
Yeah.
But if we don't have money in the budget currently, it's not happening anyway. But the risk is the $5,000 because we don't know, there's no guarantee for getting
Right.
the grant.
And do we have $5,000?
Well, that's it. So spending money in the middle of a budget that has not been accounted for is really hard, right?
Yes.
It's easier when you do it at the beginning, right? Really hard. It's not saying it can't be done, but it's really hard. Do we have a line item for grant writing?
No.
We don't have a line item for grant writing and we don't have a line item for planning.
Yeah.
So how do we solve that?
We have a line of planning, but right now, for planning and zoning consulting, it all goes to the attorney for both boards.
Yeah,
You did say at the beginning of the year, Teresa, if I recall correctly, you went out to each one of us and said, what were your committees like this year? And I'm gonna give that a good budget. So we did,
But this is also a very unusual year for the
Right.
budget, as you know,
Right.
we've had quite a few challenges.
no, but what I'm saying is that everybody had the opportunity to put in.
Did the grants committee, I don't know that the grants committee
You
did.
can email all of us.
No.
Yes,
I
I have it. I don't
don't
know why you're laughing.
Yeah.
I can show you the email. It's from Teresa.
Ben,
Yeah.
just, for my clarification, you're saying the Historic Association is gonna, and I probably got this wrong, is gonna reimburse the 25% or no?
Well, what was proposed is that the Historic Commission pay the application fee because it's difficult to make the changes. Councilman Olson said. And then once the grant is awarded, provided it is, of course, because it may not, meaning the Historic Association is the only entity that would be taking any sort of financial risk.
Yeah.
But assuming that it's awarded, then that 25% match, which again, Historic Association has committed to. They're in favor of this, and they know that this is well timed and could be excellent for the long term viability of Bicentennial Hall. The proposal is that whatever the application fee turns out to be, and not to, all we know right now is not to exceed, so it's gonna be less than 5,200. We will actually know what that expenditure, because it will have been made in 2024, but awarded, and the work will be done in 2025. So we would be able to put in the budget the cost of whatever that portion of the match that Historic Association wouldn't pay.
But we don't know what that is.
Well, we know it's gonna be less than $5,200.
But then when you're talking about the 25%, we don't know what that's going to be.
We know we can apply for a certain range, but we won't know it until they start to put together the work. It'll be known before they submit the application, and I can see if we can get it before April 8th.
So the historic entity fronts, we'll pay the application fee.
The 52.
Okay, yeah, right, so that's, assume we pay nothing.
No, the 5,200 is to get a grant writer to.
I get it.
apply for the grant.
Yep, just give me a second. Yep, got it, right? So that's to apply for. Let's say we get the grant, right?
Right.
We're gonna have to pay a quarter of whatever we get.
Correct.
Correct.
Well, the Historic Association is prepared to
So-
step,
Minus the 5,200.
Yes.
right, whatever the cost of the application
To
fee is.
pay 25% minus 5,200. So if it's 17,500, they give us 12.
I think that,
But we're gonna have to front.
I would like to
we're-
hear what you guys are
But we're
saying.
gonna have to pay the money. We're not allowed to do that, is what they're saying.
We
right?
have to be very careful as to how we speak about this.
Yeah,
We can't have, we're not in business with the Fairhaven Historic Committee to go into partnership with who's fronting money and who's getting reimbursed.
It's not like an mafia.
So it's either they're paying the application fee and we are paying a percentage of the match.
So
We're not
So we have to-
reimbursing anybody.
so we
We
have to,
got that, we got that.
I'm
Yeah, we just
reiterating what
we just
Mr.
said that.
said.
They'll pay for that and then we pay
we just have to
percentage.
confirm that that would be okay with them to pay that upfront with the risk
Which I did do,
that we don't get the grant
right.
and they don't,
But we can't pay them back.
we're not paying them back in
No.
this scenario.
We'll have
Because
to-
Is the, in what we're talking about, no matter how much money we get in the grant, is our max exposure $5,200?
Gosh.
yes, well, no, because
No.
it's none, because if they're paying. No.
I can't use the word anymore, but
I'm confused now.
at the end of the day, is our max exposure of $5,200?
No, our max is 25% of 75 grand.
Less 5,200?
No,
Plus 52.
Plus 52.
correct.
No, not plus
Tax
a few hundred,
payback.
because we're not paying that back. So theirs would be, well, less 50, yeah.
It's out.
Yes, we
Can I ask you a
can.
question? So just an alternative scenario, not saying I'm advocating for this, but if this grants every year. Are the wheels in motion that we could set, now in the next few weeks for next year? And maybe separate the plan, the maintenance plan from the programming.
I don't think you do it the next few weeks, you'd probably put it in queue to take a look at in fall. I would think.
Yeah, I don't,
I don't know that it'll be available next year, and we're ready to do the work in the spring of 2025, which is when the grant will be awarded.
This-
I don't know.
I think we've exhausted the discussion here unless people want to continue discussing. I'd either say table it or someone move for a vote. I'm equally as confused as I was when we started.
Is
I
there a way of
love,
explaining it?
no, I'm hung up on this. For me, this is a financial decision. I'm committed to the restoration of Bicentennial Hall.
The problem is
Um,
we're saying we're committed to it, but we're not actually putting any money behind it. I'm not
I get-
saying that this is the way we have to do it,
Exactly,
but,
that's my.
but in
point
this
is,
budget
in-
as we have it,
In,
that's not happening.
in this moment, I'll,
$350,000 authorized in a prior market
Correct.
ordinance to restore Bicentennial Hall, so to say that you're not putting any money.
Well, and the scope of
Okay.
work in
This
that
is different
contract,
than
this is
restoration of Bicentennial
We
Hall.
can use salt.
This is a planning grant, which is different from the,
correct.
yeah, I'd have to go back and read the bond ordinance, but I believe the contemplated piece of that wasn't for a planning grant.
No.
You don't think
That's
that
what
three
we cut
fifty could go towards the planning grant?
No,
Okay, or not the planning grant.
even if there was
Planning
soft
for-
cost, it'd be related to the actual capital improvement, not to a planning grant, which is unrelated to the maintenance. So
So, who wants to summarize this? Because I might not have done a good job.
No, I think we get it. I mean, so basically this. We have, if we want to get money for the planning portion of Bicentennial Hall, even though we have $350,000 in a bond for the actual improvements, we have no plan to make those improvements. So nothing's gonna happen until we have funding does the planning take money? If you think that this is not gonna take the money, then
Does figuring out what the long-term use of Bicentennial, does that take planning? Yes.
yes, which takes funding.
Which we can apply for 52, a number not to exceed $5,200. What do you think we should do, you guys? And it's on someone else's dime. Why wouldn't we? It's the right thing. It's well timed. It's a planning grant, things we don't have money for, like planning.
Wow.
Don't happen from the budget.
Risk.
It is.
It's a risk that we have, somebody's willing to take on our behalf.
Right.
Because it's a
Who would
community.
vote for that 5,200?
Because, well, there's a board of trustees that's entrusted with those dollars, and
I also want to clarify something. So I just want to protect us again, and I did this at the last meeting with the farmers market. Who is the chair of the historic committee?
the
That-
president
Yes,
is Elise Casey.
okay, so I see Elise is here.
Mm-hmm.
Are they willing on the record, are they gonna state that they are going to pay and reimburse, whatever I don't even know what the terminology is at this point, the 25%?
That's a good question. We can ask her.
Wait, let me just clarify. It's the Historic Association, not the Historic Committee, correct?
It's the Historic Association.
Not the historic.
No,
commission.
it's
Correct,
It's a
commission.
separate 501(c)(3) funding one. It's
Yes.
not our historic preservation.
I think that's
Borough's
what
last-
he's making sure.
Welcome, Elise.
Hi, I'm Casey, 263 Fairhaven Road. Okay, so we were under the impression that if we fronted the 5,200, that there was a potential to get reimbursed, so that's not an option. Correct?
Well, not yes.
No,
They're saying
it's
I'm
not.
not using that terminology.
Okay, so what if the Historic Association agreed to pay the application fee with no reimbursement attached?
Then
If
that's-
you twist my arm,
But that's sort of, yes,
Then
then,
so we'd have to discuss.
No, I'm saying-
If they weren't looking for.
I'm sorry, I was writing
reimbursement-
numbers.
If they
I missed
weren't
that.
looking for reimbursement and they were just gonna pay for it. 501(c)(3).
I have a text out to the CFO, she hasn't answered me yet, but at the end of the day, could we accept a donation from that organization earmarked to pay for a grant writer? We'd have to have a mechanism to bring it out, that's acceptable, but. Right.
I don't think that's any different than fireworks, the same thing.
There's certain trust funds that can take money and can't, and this one I'd have to.
You have a historic trust fund with a balance in it.
I'm at the, yeah.
There's a small balance in it.
Like I said, I don't, it's probably doable, I just off the top of my head right now, want to make sure that.
If we could get the Historic Association to agree to front the application fee with no reimbursement attached, is that something that you guys would then be willing to?
But then is
But it's the back end one.
and then is the historic going to also pay for the 25%?
That's something.
Pay the match?
If it's awarded, at least we know. Well, I could say this, Teresa, by April 8th, do you think that we'll know, which is our next council meeting, do you think, well, the team will have a rough estimate on the total scope of work? Knowing that.
I don't know how, I don't know what Collier's plans for ascertaining that are, quite frankly.
Oh, I do.
Can I ask a question? If they fronted the 5,200 and we applied for the grant and we earn the grant, at that point, we don't necessarily have to take the grant. At that point, we can have a discussion as to whether you're willing to
Mhm.
pull the 25%. If we're not willing to do it at that point, there's no risk to us.
I'm not comfortable with that.
I agree.
So I agree with that, but it seems, you're defending an organization that seems to feel pretty strongly about wanting to do this, correctly?
Yes.
Is it?
But one of the,
So,
Mayor, one of the problems I'm having though, and this is just timing, it has nothing to do with Ms. Casey's statement, is that I would have to, a resolution would have to be prepared
Mhm.
to accept it as a gift. And that wouldn't be ready, obviously, until April 8th. And then we come into a timing issue.
And we need a resolution to support the application. Also, we could do that by
Yes.
April 8th. I don't think what's the issue?
April 8th, and then they have the turnaround time is 9 days.
For them to apply, Colliers, we'd have to find out if they're able
It,
to.
it's gonna take them some time to pull this grant together, especially the meeting with your committee and you're doing narratives and working together. I wouldn't start that on April 9th. I can tell you that much right now.
I think, if I may, I just want to reframe slightly. Okay? If the Historic Association pays for submission of the application, right, not reimbursed, nothing, they paid for it,
Grant writing.
grant writing.
Mhm.
And it's a $40,000 grant. Is the council willing to agree to $10,000?
I'm not willing to agree to that right now, but what I'm saying is when that comes before us, I might be. At that point, we can have the discussion and make the decision. But let me, bear with me, because before we walked in here, I was under the impression they were gonna cover 25% of 40,000, which is $10,000. So now they're taking 5,200 and you're asking me to take 10, that just flipped. So what I'm saying is if there's no risk to the borough council and they're gonna take the 5,200, then we're gonna get the grant and have a discussion at that point about what that 25% is. Maybe it's a negotiation, maybe they take the whole thing, maybe we take the whole thing, but at that point, we can look at what we actually got. There's no risk whatsoever.
So you're decoupling the two.
We can.
Yeah.
if you
Which
want.
I-
If they feel very strongly about this grant, and they wanna go after it, and there's no risk to us. I mean, I'm gonna be reasonable when it comes back in front of me. You know, if they've spent $5,200 and they earn 40 grand, you know. From my standpoint, if they've put a lot of work into this. I think we've heard from a few people that have basically called this a crown jewel of sorts of our municipality. It's the only historic building that we have. Do I want to spend? I don't want to spend $1, but I never want to spend $1. That's kind of my MO. So, you know, will we have that discussion at that time? I'd be willing to have that discussion and. At the end of the day, worst case scenario, they can make a decision at that point if they want the entire grant.
So Teresa,
Oh,
if we did that scenario and we did come up with 10,000, let's say, how would that be a bond ordinance? Would that be part of the existing bond ordinance? Would it be
In a planning grant, I think it's current fund budget.
current fund budget?
Yeah, I
So-
mean, it's not like it's a capital improvement projects where I can charge it to soft cost or the ordinance that we've already passed. This is strictly telling you, it's laying out a plan for how you're gonna maintain this building. You know, and if it's a match to that grant, I don't see where I'd charge the capital.
So what I'm probing is if they agree to pay the 5,200, we win the grant, we have to come up with the 10,000, but we can't.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it doesn't fit the budget, it breaks a rule, then what?
Well, then we have that conversation.
I find that hard. Like, I think where I'm stuck is I just don't want to put them out
Yeah.
with us not guaranteeing that if we get
Right,
the award, if we get awarded, we're not gonna automatically take it.
right,
But if we get awarded and we don't have the $10,000 anywhere, how can it,
right.
but we're just gonna keep, we're gonna keep running into this with every grant. So I'm kind of going back to my statement at the last meeting. If there's no funding in our budgets for grants,
Right.
why are we even seeking grants?
Yes.
If there's, but we're seeking grants because we have projects that we want to get done that don't have the funding.
Can I answer,
Capital project.
can I answer that?
It's,
They're saying because it's a planning.
Yeah,
You-
So if we go after grants for capital projects.
For every Monmouth County open space grant we've ever gotten, the money to fund the project has come out of capital.
But then how do we plan anything now?
Well, you could, hopefully in a better budget year, put some money in for grant writing or planning or, we've never used the grant writing class. Every grant we've submitted, I've
The
submitted.
planning, but you're saying we can't, essentially, there's never gonna be any room this year for any planning. So there's no planning at the rivers to any of our open space, like any of our access water, there, because that's kind of where our needs are. Like, we have a lot of capital improvements going on, but it's the projects that are like sort of behind now that we, so we're saying, let's wait till 2025.
Well, in this case, though, you're talking about planning for another capital.
Yes, well, no, I was going to another thing, yes, because our next one we want to come to is more planning, but again, what's the point of the grant committee if, for planning, I guess, for capital improvement?
And you feel like you absolutely need professional to
That's
help
what I was getting
with
from
the,
from
with the
Drew.
grant. If it can't
Yeah.
be done, you absolutely, it's.
They're saying like 24 hours.
Okay.
Like,
So,
that was sort of the estimate that they gave me.
Okay.
That's a lot of hours to ask of a volunteer to do a grant.
Right.
listen, I'm perfectly comfortable inching this down the road if we want to do it in increments. We'll learn more as we go. That's not a bad thing. So, I appreciate the commitment of the Historic Association, above and beyond, really.
Yes.
We're not a delinquent partner. We do care about the same things and we're committed to the work and much of it is already in the works. So there's a lot of good faith work coming, from local government in terms of the improvements and upgrades to the building. So we just wanted to emphasize how much we appreciate the offer. And I personally would like to accept the offer. And I would motion that I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Collier proposal, have a kickoff meeting and begin the grant writing.
Are you proposing that you're accepting the
Well,
Historic Association to pay for the $5,200?
I don't know how to
Or you're
do
saying that
that.
the borough?
Well, I don't know how to do that, but else, Mr. Sobel guidance.
Well, I can't, I don't know right now how
That
to
we're
do it.
proposing though ultimately?
I am.
That's-
Yeah, I'm gonna have to create a resolution
For the next meeting.
for the next meeting.
That we can't do that tonight. You're
Oh,
supposed
I'm
to.
on the fly now. I'm accepting a gift.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that leaves them 9 days for,
9 days.
at the most 40 hours of work. At the most, that's the number though. And you take their fee
Yeah.
and they take the do not exceed.
Well,
40 hours.
they can't begin the work? Is there a way that they could?
Unless they're gonna do the work gratis until their resolution's approved.
No,
but we're
I
not-
can't do that. I can't have a professional doing work for the borough without issuing a PO. I have to issue the PO.
You know the gymnastics that I went through this week, don't you?
What's that?
When you were away, I just work with us a little bit here. We want to give these people, how many days? 9 days? Well,
I think we need to find out.
We wanted to go backwards to get them on a call today so that this could be brought here.
Well, let's see, you don't have to take my advice and you can just pass it.
Professional saying that that's not what we should do, so I would advise against that. Is there any other way, and I'm getting creative and tell me to shut up, if someone, a private citizen wanted to issue a holding PO with a Colliers?
No,
And no.
we're accepting a gift.
Got it, okay, so it sounds like our only option is to wait for the next meeting. If we're gonna do it that way, put together a resolution, they would have 9 days I think we're gonna have to ask Colliers
Yeah.
whether they can turn it around in those 9 days. If they can't, what I would suggest, and I think that this is a bigger conversation for the budget going into
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
year as well,
Yes.
that we have to get a hold of what we wanna do from a planning perspective, especially with some waterfront properties coming down the pike that we need to plan for.
Yes.
And additionally, it might not be the worst thing in the world too, just because we've talked about the pause this year and getting some of these other projects done. And then we can go after this grant, sounds like it's a annual grant,
I
hopefully.
can't confirm that.
Kristen looked it up, but it might not be there, you never know, you never know, but that would be the plan to go after it. But I would like to say like, thank you so much for your hard work, it sounds like it was a crazy week as well in trying to put this forth, but let's not give up hope, let's see, contact Colliers
Okay.
tomorrow, let's find out how long will it actually take you to do the grant? If they think they can turn around in 9 days, do we need to vote
Well, then-
now to know whether, how do we handle that?
I'll draft the resolution.
We can just draft it for the next meeting. Is everyone okay with that plan?
Yes.
You sure?
You need the donation in hand.
And I think we have
I
to.
don't know what else we
I
can.
don't know if we have.
No, I like the next meeting.
Brian, you all right with that?
As far as I understand, we're confused.
We're, tomorrow morning, we reach out to Colliers, see if we give them a approval at our next council meeting. Can they turn around the grant application in 9 days,
Yes.
correct?
That's about
Well-
40 hours.
And in that scenario, the vote would be for the Historic Association to pay the $5,200 fee to Colliers. Everyone understand that? Then we would, if we were successful in the grant, at that time, we'll have a conversation as to whether we want to accept the grant.
Okay,
Does everyone understand that?
yes.
I think
But I
that
don't-
would be the best case scenario.
But I wouldn't vote to move forward if we're not guaranteeing that we're gonna accept the grant once we get it, so.
I understand that. For me, it's a financial conversation. It's not a, whether we should plan for bicentennial hall.
No, I know, but I'm just thinking that might be the conversation to have before we get to the meeting.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would like to be on the call with Colliers because I understand the scope of work and I understand what documents we have on hand for them to actually build the application.
I'm fine, $12 tomorrow.
And there's no reason why anyone else who's assembling documents for the grant application should have to wait for this body to adopt
I-
the
you know,
resolution.
I could talk to the borough attorney tomorrow, I'm not, we didn't really talk about this ahead of time. We accept gifts from 501(c)(3)s in the past without resolutions. I'm not positive we need a resolution. I think Andrew's good intent here is to make sure that we actually have the money in hand. The borough actually has the money in hand, provided I have a place to bring it out, in and out of the trust fund as for the CFO. I don't have a problem cutting the PO. I also don't have a problem, I could certainly see if you could put the money in the budget and then, expend the funds and reimburse the line if you get the donation. I mean, there might be a way to do it that's not gonna take us to April 8th, but I just can't pull that out of a rabbit's hat right now at this minute.
The only reason I have some reservation is because we're dealing with government assistance.
Mhm.
We're doing grant writing application. And I mean, I
Yeah,
get
and
it,
your
but
point-
the only, when we talk about fair every day, it's just an event that we're throwing. That's what we.
I'd rather err on the side of caution here and do this the appropriate way with the guidance from our attorney. We have a plan. We need to talk offline in preparation for the next meeting. We need to talk to Colliers and take that path forward.
Can I just ask one question? Is it possible to pass right now something that says, if we're able to do it this way without getting a resolution, that we can move forward with the grant? Is there any way to, no?
I don't wanna usurp, Andrew has a good point, you're applying for a federal grant here, there may be other requirements that would
Okay.
wanna make it more formal resolution. I wanna say something else too, for the benefit of the public and for the governing body. Borough of Fairhaven has received millions upon millions of dollars of grants. And like I said, they've been applied for myself, for Rich Gardella. If anything, right now, the reason I'm not writing this grant myself, or Rich Gardella's not helping me write this grant, is because we're too busy doing all the projects for grants that we've already gotten. Our problem hasn't been getting grants. It's at this juncture, having way too many projects that are currently in queue, many of them paid for by grants, that we have to, oversee and move forward.
I see so much potential with this grant if awarded, and thank you, Councilman Cole, for all your hard work. But if we can somehow get together and meet and see if we can all approve the application fee, then next step would be, when would you need the check?
I would need it the day after the meeting, resolutions approved on the 8th, on the 9th, so I could get a PO to Colliers.
2 weeks. Okay,
In 2 weeks.
okay. Thank you. Oh,
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Elise.
Can I ask a question of Teresa before the next meeting? Could you think about if we do win the grant, how we would come up with the 10,000 and what avenue would that take?
You're
I'm
asking.
almost positive that the planning grant would be part of the fund, but I will double check.
What's that?
I didn't know who you were asking that question.
Speaking of millions of dollars in grants, you have a facilities update?
So, confirmed today with our contact down in DC, our grant for, the community center was written into law.
Yes.
And, hang on, and we didn't get $1 million though. We got 1.25 million. So $250,000 extra is signed into law. And that grant took 2 overnights
Yeah.
with pretty much everybody up here.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
You did it.
It's hard work.
Yeah, we did.
I want to specifically, take note, I'm not sure if Michael didn't bring up that grant, that we would have had it, and Drew did the absolute heavy lifting, on that as well. Along with, obviously our local congressman representation, we're very appreciative of everyone that worked on this, and, it's fantastic for the borough of Fairhaven, so.
So I led with some good news. I'll start with something benign and then I'll get to a change order potential. Councilwoman Koch, when we asked for the grout color, so if the governing body recalls, right, that was the DPW siding and stone. So up here, we're gonna get the physical samples are 3 pages. You'll see the asterisks where the color is. What the professionals stated would be a good color with the contrast, because there's white trim, there's the mist, I don't know what you call it, the stone, the raven grout color. That is what the professionals articulated. However, from my understanding, we also looked at natural gray 24. So what I would like to do is to get the actual physical ones and bring them in and give you guys something a little better to look at.
So what are these ones, just others?
Yeah, like terracotta.
They seem so brown.
These are the
Yeah.
only, so the
Wrong colors, yeah.
the reason there's only 8 is because those are the only ones that are available.
Oh.
So it wasn't like those asterisks were picked. So out of all of these colors with the grout that's going there, there's only 8 colors available.
None of them work. If I were to tell you.
Oh, I have it here. You can put it on.
I like the natural gray better, but I don't like the name as much.
I mean, that's the best one, I would say, but it's like very
Raven?
brown.
Which one's darker?
Well, it's the one above it, the arrow up, so it's that one.
Kind of brown.
You got,
It's better.
listen,
Now, I'm
that's my
saying-
wife. This is not my forte. So.
But you know what, the actual grout colors would be very different.
Did they say why they wanted like a dark black grout behind the gray stone?
Because of the dirty, because of how dirty grout can get over time. And given that it's gonna be an industrial site and
It'll just end up black anyway?
it's gonna end up dirty, so they wanted to pick,
It doesn't end up flat.
not
Oh,
black,
too
it just
bad.
ends up dirty.
That's probably the
And
best.
you also wanted the contrast, but again, I'd like to bring in the real samples.
The contrast is a look, I don't think.
I think
that
this is the
looks-
closest.
That's the limits of my contribution here. We don't want contrasting brown.
That's the nothing of power.
So then I think it has to be natural.
Oh, I
Natural gray. We don't want contrast.
So we like 24, yeah?
I mean, it seems like
Yes.
that's the closest.
So I'll get some physical copies, bring them in.
I don't really feel qualified to make that
I don't
decision.
need those.
I'm sort of.
Like, that was my
Is that your
first
thing?
Oh, yeah. I'm
Okay.
really picky about color.
natural gray. What a lame name.
Great white.
Man, you running names tonight.
They said it was
What'd you say? It does, right? Can we just pick natural gas and call it Raven?
No, I think we should call it Raven. Like, don't mess with us. We're Raven Affair.
My last, update, so, we do have unfortunately a change order with DPW. Underneath the current siding, which I believe is called T111, based on the original assessments of the current conditions, it was assumed that plywood was behind the T111. So what originally occurred was the professional went there to different parts, they opened up the walls and they looked and they saw plywood as they thought behind the T111. After the walls were demolished, the plywood stopped at a certain height and didn't go all the way to the ceiling. You need to have plywood, then you need to have the siding. There's 3,800 square feet of plywood missing, and the cost estimate is around $60,000.
Dang.
Yes.
But look, these are the things we knew might happen.
Correct. It's an unforeseen. We're renovating the building. The roof, if you guys drive by and check out the roof, you'll smell the pine. The roof is being laid, so we didn't have any issues there. There was a potential concern on one other aspects with the footings, but the entire team went out, worked everything, no change order there. So far, relatively with a building that's 50 years old, actually as of this year, because it was built in 74. The plywood unfortunately is something that is required.
Yeah, if that applies.
So
I don't think there's anything.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be extremely transparent.
Do you, is the 60,000?
It'll be on the agenda.
Estimate, is it
Yeah, we got it.
material?
Need to change order.
My question was, is it a material expense or is there additional labor associated with that?
The good majority of it is,
If we don't know yet,
Material.
that's an answer.
no, it's material. There's some,
Alright.
small amount of, well, there's,
5%
Yeah.
GC cost.
Okay,
It's 20% unit cost per square plus 5% total GC cost to manage it.
remember, we looked at removing it and reutilizing some of the places, but the labor involved in some of that stuff was just ridiculous, just to say, you know.
There's been some termite damage. There's a couple extra posts that have to be replaced, but based on
And
what we
you
do,
don't
it's
want-
all been.
50-year-old, sheathing up that, had been water damaged or God knows what. If you're gonna do this building, you might, the difference is different.
Correct.
See, there was an allowance in the bid. And it only assumed that, we would need a certain percentage, and at the end, we need a larger percentage of that. That's really what it came down to.
And per our approved process, since this is over 5, right? This isn't just a PO that we're gonna cut based on the guidance here. We'll come back here once we have it. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilman. Moving along, new business consent agenda. We're talking about 2024-76 through 2024-84. Just pointing out, we've struck 85 and 86 from this consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion, does anyone want anything separated from 76 through 84? No. Does anyone have any comments on anything from 76 to 84? That being said, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Yes.
Rivera?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes. Thank you. Department reports, February 2024. Do I have a motion to accept the reports as submitted with a thank you?
Motion with the thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We're now at the good of the borough portion of the meeting. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name, address for the record. Please do observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is anyone in the public with a good of the borough? Comment? No? Allison, is there anyone online?
This is our problem.
Good evening again.
Hi.
I have noticed several times when I've gone to the Acme after dark that the lights aren't on in the front. Who do I address that with? Because I'm sure it was a planning board requirement when the whole Acme area was redesigned.
You talking about like the overhead lights
Lights.
in the parking lot or like the active
Yes.
sign?
No, in the parking lot. The lights are not on after dark.
I think we could probably send a email to the property management there. Okay, the chief's gonna take care of it.
And sometimes that happens when on the timer, when the timing changes. Usually it's the other way. though.
I do like some bucks.
Yeah.
Go for it. Wait, Allison, anyone else?
No, sir.
Oh, fine.
Fine, for City of 115 Baton. Having just been at the Bicentennial Hall, and it's not opening until there yet. But, at Bicentennial Hall for the sports swap, it was the little light in the front, there's like a crack in it. This light is coming through and I'm so concerned with any delay to this whole restoration. I don't know, is there any way that we could just shore that up? We could do something. I'm afraid it's gonna fall right out of the building. Sorry?
I'm not clear on what you're talking about.
The little light, you know, the beautiful little lights like right above the front door?
Inside or outside?
Well, so from inside, you can see the light coming through the crack in the wood.
Okay.
But from the outside, the paint's all peeling off. It looks like it's about to fall out and it's a very historic piece of that building. I'm just wondering if we could do something in the meantime.
Did you take a picture and send
See,
it?
we have our meeting Thursday. We can bring
Yeah.
it up at a Thursday
Yeah.
stakeholder meeting or a bunch of things.
I mean, the ADA is starting, right, in April, right? That whole project, is it
No,
not?
you haven't put it up there yet.
Is there any way we can get that going, just to get visible?
It is certainly on our radar. We have, Matt Cronin and Rich Gardella working on it.
What is the remaining piece of work to be done?
I would have to pin the two of them down to find out where they are at this juncture. I know they've been in touch with each other, but I will have to follow up on that.
Okay,
Yeah, I just would.
we
love
can
to see
find
that.
out.
It's rotting by the day. It's
Stained glass?
Yeah, it's a little stained glass window in front. If you walk by or
It's
you.
big round,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
so it's not just, it's way above it.
Yes,
high.
yes. But
Okay.
I mean, from the
So-
outside.
Yeah, you don't want that to fall out.
So two separate things, right? ADA punch list. We have our stakeholder meeting this Thursday. We'll bring up the status of the punch list items and see where that stands.
That has nothing to do with the ADA.
Correct, the
Well,
ADA in
The
the,
ADA is the first step, right? That's
We're
first,
gonna-
that's getting
correct.
fixed and then the
Oh,
next.
together.
it's happening together.
It's happening together.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have our stakeholder meeting until Thursday.
I just
We meet
heard
once a month.
that there was an extension and then I thought, oh, this is.
That's for the ADA.
That's for the ADA. That's not gonna impact the punch list items.
And maybe if it is in jeopardy, there's some sort of immediate repairs.
Yeah, I just,
It sounds like you're concerned about it.
Yeah.
Shoot us an email and we'll address it Thursday night.
okay. So I should
She doesn't have to,
imagine-
I wrote it down.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
He's got it.
Anybody else?
Looks like, I want to ask Susan O'Brien has her hand up.
So let me finish everything I want to say before you cut me off. I wanted to meet with the mayor after the planning board meeting, but he disappeared before I could snag him. Mayor, do you have office hours?
You can call me anytime you want, Susan. I spend probably a quarter of my day on the phone and talking to our awesome constituents. So I don't have office hours per se, but I'm always available. So just email me if you want to have a conversation, if you want to meet for a coffee, whatever.
Okay, next thing, I got dropped before when I was talking about Bicentennial Hall. And I wanted to bring up the fact that the landing in the front doesn't seem to be right. You have to step down to get out of the building, and everybody's worried about me killing myself stepping out of the building. I don't think it's up to code. If you think about your front door when you walk out, your landing is basically level. You're not stepping down.
I stepped out.
Yeah.
You step down out of your house? I don't.
I do into my garage.
Well, why don't we check?
We'll take a look at it on the punch list as well.
I don't think it's up to well, it's dangerous. And everybody's worried about me killing myself when I leave the building.
Oh, we don't want that.
Susan, that might be on the ADA, we'll look into that.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but I'm bringing it up just to at least cover it.
We'll
And then
take a look.
the last thing that I wanted to say was, that I was on the Brush and Leaf Committee. And, as far as I remember, the only thing that was discussed as far as this new can was the size that DPW needed. I don't believe we ever discussed round, gray, anything along those lines.
Yes.
I just wanted that on the record.
It was very specific, though, from the governing body standpoint, that we don't want all different looking cans and containers and colors and sizes all over the borough. So
But it can be a
Okay.
can up to 32 gallons, doesn't have to be
32.
32.
32 gallon.
And round and gray.
Round and gray.
Round and gray.
Or wheels.
Because
Because
there's a
there's-
hole at the bottom for the rain.
Susan, are
Well,
you,
that's something you have to do yourself.
you good, Susan?
Or
So it can't have wheels?
Okay.
You can, if it's round and gray and it's 32 gallons.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna throw it.
Yeah, if Julie's up unless.
Sure.
Not to exceed.
I just want to give kudos to Outreach Communications on the Brush and Leaf. Like phenomenal work, like with the letters, with all that, Babs is upstairs crushing it, like it's,
Just so the residents know, they haven't gone out yet.
no, not yet,
But
yeah,
they're gonna be great.
they're gonna be great,
Today they're in the buzz.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
it's a machine up there, so good job, everybody.
Good job in putting it together.
Yeah, thank you, Betty Ann.
I do have one, I know from the grass committee, I just wanted to like plant to see with for some reason chronologically, and we review these chronologically for council. We've had these preservation grants, we're moving towards open space, parks, planning, there's a transportation one, I don't know that that's gonna be relevant, but we'll continue to bring them to you. There is, and I feel an obligation to mention this, let me get this little one out of the way. There's a deer, the Fish and Wildlife has put together a small grant, they call it grant/loan program. We'll look into it and bring that here since we're gonna be taking up that whole discussion about deer management. But there's one more that, you know, we wanna do the best job that we can. And I'm looking at Councilwoman DiMaselli, because we're both on the grants committee. There is a new discretionary fund that was announced, and the deadline is April 8th. Like we have discovered with the experience that both Michael and Drew made possible for Fairhaven with this other discretionary fund. You know, I mean, it's possible. It's a very simple initial letter that would be required, a 250 word short, it's not even half a page really, and then some cost estimates. As I understand it, I think there is follow-up request for additional information. They require a 20% match, which can be expressed in a lot of different ways, including a lot of the work that we have done so far. I forgot to talk about. I'm not even proposing this at this time. I just wanted to say, we don't want to keep that information from the governing body. It's here, it's simple, and yet it's right around the corner. It was so much work to talk about the last one. I don't know if you guys want to talk about this one. Michael, maybe you want to take it.
I mean, it is a long process.
Yeah.
So this wouldn't be for immediate needs. It would be for longer term plans, but one of the ideas that we were thinking that as a committee is we could use it for our projects on the river. So any of our access to the river, since that is in one of the unfinished parts of our master plan, not unfinished, but one of the goals of our master plan is this could be used for those kind of projects. It was small, I mean, there's always a chance you don't get it after all this work. But the initial piece that we'd be asking for approval would only to be a letter to be considered by Senator Booker. Senator, yes, Senator Booker. And then they decide if they think we're even qualified or should even reach out. So the only thing we'd be asking for in by the next council meeting is for approval to move forward with this one pager.
Yeah,
So, and the idea would be if we got the grant to use it on the waterfront?
Possibly, I mean, that could be something we decide,
public
but
access.
public access to the waterfront. So we talked about living shorelines and, maybe,
21.
yeah, and maybe finish off Hans that got taken out of the
Mhm.
micro projects plan.
Okay. I'm just wondering if, is this a conversation for the community? If we were able to get discretionary funding, because some of the things that we wanted to put off, for example, taking a look at phase 2 of the community center police station. There's a desire to do some of the park upgrades too. So I guess I asked the question, is this something we should be asking the
I
community?
think that's a
For input on.
good conversation. How do we go about doing that? Because the open space fund is,
It's hard to hear about a grant right here that's not already on the agenda to discuss.
Right.
Without me having additional information and having a educated discussion about whether we might be interested in moving forward. So what I would recommend is if the grant committee thinks it's something that we should strongly consider, send out a message to the governing body with the information, obviously on blind copy. So that there's no quorum issue.
Send it to me, and I can send that information.
okay.
There's no quorum issues.
It's, you can't discuss it,
Right,
you can.
and
send
then
out
at least we can
information.
review it, and if we feel as if there's a reason to workshop it
Mhm.
at a future meeting, I think that's a better venue than right now during
But this gives us a direction, so.
Yeah.
And I did send out the information on the Monmouth County Open Space Grant.
Yeah.
to
Yes,
all
thank
W
you.
body members.
So that's fair, it's not only drained from all of it, anyway, but, it's not our place to withhold it, and it's due April 8th. So this was the only meeting that we could communicate that, consider it communicated.
Is the Historic Association interested in matching?
It's really not funny. Not laughing at that just yet, maybe tomorrow.
All right.
So although Kristen's point is a good one, which is, okay, how do we arrive at a set of priorities? And where is it useful to attach grant dollars? Which initiatives are useful to attach grant dollars? Because we are gonna be, your grants committee is gonna give you the review of Monmouth County Open Space Fund, which will be up to $500,000. And we're gonna attend a workshop and get some more information. We're gonna do a lot of due diligence. So by the time you guys get a template, hours have gone into it. I just wanna flag that, because it's not like we threw it together. We're doing the due diligence and bringing it here with a lot of effort. So anyway,
If I could just double
I
click real
don't know
quick.
if come to an understanding what our
I think
priorities.
what would be helpful is
Did you
that,
say, can I double click?
Yes.
Yes, he did. A new one, it's a new
Sorry,
one.
continue.
It's the counter level set.
hey,
Levels that I've heard. I don't know, but I liked it.
thanks, I'm on the record, double clicking, mayor approved. I think the reason I like, Kristen, what you said is because if we can provide guidance on the priorities that the governing body setting, and then that's where the grant, I know how much is involved with grant writing, right? I mean, it's intense.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of an open house. I love getting that feedback, understanding what a list of priorities were, and then we can set that directive to the grant committee to hunt after these specific priorities. Because we've talked about like playgrounds, we've talked about the parks, we've talked about stormwater upgrades, right? We've talked about open space planning, right? We've talked about all these different things, so.
And remember, we don't want the grants to drive the decision.
Correct,
We want the
to
decision
to drive the grants, so.
How do we get to that? To me,
Yeah.
and you guys maybe don't wanna hear this. This is when you bring in your planner to facilitate a comprehensive discussion about what are your priorities and what. Somebody needs to do that work with us. That's what I've done in the past. I've been part of it from both sides. They're
Well,
effective.
I also think you can't lose sight of the fact that, I'm in fear, but, you've got to look out on a 5-year capital plan or a strategic plan. And it has to coalesce with your budget. You have, you can't be applying for, $2 million of grants that require a $2 million grant match and not say, how is this fitting into our capital authorization program and how it's gonna impact the taxes in the long run? They have to fit together, because, you take roads, and the roads is a perfect example. You have two options. You can authorize road projects every single year, based on getting an NJDOT grant and say we're gonna authorize whatever, or you can say we're gonna authorize $3 million in roads, and then you'll pick away at that and build that balance down. And it's been done both ways, but either way, you have to look at how it's gonna impact your budget.
So take natural resources and open space instead of roads.
As far as natural resources and open space, generally speaking, we usually look at them on an annual basis. That's why we do our bond authorizations after the budget's been adopted historically.
So I think we should look at a plan over a period of time that lets us.
And certainly to do that, that's
Pointed out with
up with a
roads.
strategic plan.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind that you can't bind a future governing body. Regardless.
They don't have.
I don't think
Well,
this is, I don't think this is the right discussion. It's not on the agenda. I think, we gotta figure out what committee to run this through and then I think it's a great conversation to have. I just don't think it's appropriate right now because it's not on the agenda. It's a bigger conversation. So. You have someone else?
Oh, no, that was it.
All good?
I have a happy birthday to the food and mayor this week.
I share a birthday with my daughter. My wife is one day before me.
What's the date?
Can't tell you that.
Happy birthday to our family.
I'm giving you my birthday between this and next year. It'll be my. All right, I got you.
We'll just send you a happy birthday every day.
Right, and see if I react.
My birthday's 26.
So happy birthday.
7 years young. When's yours? Oh, okay.
We're all marked.
Okay.
Look at that.
One day.
It's close.
Happy birthday.
They get less exciting.
Awesome.
They do get less
Are you 30?
exciting.
Are you 37 also?
Twice over.
You're 64?
Ask
the teacher.
With that being said, we're gonna move towards executive session. The time is 9:29 PM. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn at 11:20 PM?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Good night, Fairhaven.